Hi everyone, this is Heather. It's the weekly Q&A. I'm going to dive right into your questions. First is from Ashley. She asks, what are some of the best email automations you utilize with your management system? So if you're in the group, maybe you are because you're watching this, I deferred to Leanne because I used to use Tave. I don't use it anymore because I don't have the volume of weddings that I used to take on. So Leanne is much better suited to answer this question, but she replied to Ashley. So if you want to look at that, Leanne is the queen of automation when it comes to business management workflow. So of course she's very good at post-processing, but that's not what I'm focused on. We're talking here about client management and how to automate. Good afternoon, Aunt Cynthia. Thank you for joining us. And how to automate your responses. And in fact, something, I can't remember exactly what Leanne was working on, but it seems to me that she was just interviewed for a podcast that will be coming out soon where she talks about how or why she is what she calls a hands-on, hands-off photographer. That is, she of course has personal touches in her business, but she also has automation set up to get back to people. I'll leave that for her to discuss because she's much better suited than I. Hi Amber, hello. Okay, Vanessa asked, memory cards. Tell me everything, please. What brand do you use? Speed, capacity. And then Aaron said, yes, can memory cards become slower over time? I always format my memory card before use, but I've been using the same ones for a while and they seem slow. Also, is there a difference if I plug in my camera and upload images that way, or remove the memory card from the camera and stick in my laptop? These are good questions. So I have my memory cards here. I work with a pair of D700s, so they take compact flash, and my new D750 takes these SD cards. So obviously size is the first consideration. Space, how many images per card would you like to get? So with my D700s, I shoot RAW. I was using 16 gigabyte cards, and a wedding, I would probably 2 or 3 cards I would shoot a wedding, and my assistant might give me one. And then with my new D750, I also shoot RAW, and I'm using 64 gigabyte cards. Now what I love, of course, about the D750 are the 2 slots. So I put 2 64s in those slots. I use them as backups, so each image writes to both cards, and then have 2 cards. Entire wedding goes on 1 card. Now, I mean, there are a few things to consider when doing that, because what if the card experiences some corruption? Ooh, clearly that could be an issue. But the question was, which brand? And really, to be honest, I don't have a loyalty to a particular brand. I've used many brands over the years. I mean, I haven't found one better than the other. So the first consideration is size. How many photos do you want per card? And then speed. How fast do you need the card to be? So a lot of people will think, well, I want the fastest card. I need it to be faster. Whoa, but hold on there, Skip. If your camera cannot take advantage of that speed, then you are paying for nothing. It's irrelevant because cameras have a certain write speed. So what happens is when you take a photo, your camera writes the image to an internal buffer, then it transfers it from the internal buffer to the card. And that takes time. How much time? Depends on the file size, and it depends on the speed of the camera and the card. But in general, a good test, I have my camera here, a good test for you is that if you're photographing and you are maybe sports or high action, rapid fire, bam, 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 you know, maybe you're in high speed, you're taking a lot of photos. If you ever have to wait on your camera and you will get a message in the back, usually an hourglass or something that's like, oh, I have to wait. What's happening is the camera is attempting to write from the buffer to the card. That means the buffer's full. So you'll see this information from the camera manufacturer, how many RAW images, how many JPEG images can fit in that buffer. The only time you need a faster card is if you're waiting on your camera, period. And I shouldn't say your camera because it's not accurate. It could be the card or the camera. If you're waiting, if you take a bunch of photos and you have to wait and you are maybe on a consistent basis filling your buffer, then I would recommend a faster card. If not, then you're wasting your money. It doesn't make sense to spend money on a fast card if you don't need it. I photograph weddings, I don't need fast cards. I'm not a rapid fire shooter, so it doesn't really matter to me the speed of the card. That being said, of course, this is the Kingston 600 by Ultimate, which is a pretty fast card. But I really probably did not need that because I've never waited for the buffer to clear. And this SanDisk right here is the Extreme Pro. That's 95 megabits per second. And the 600 by doesn't tell me how many megabits per second, so I'm not exactly sure. The bottom line is you only need a faster card if you're waiting on the card and you fill that buffer. If not, then don't spend the money. And again, brand doesn't really matter to me. Aaron also asked, can they get slower over time? Not really. I say not really because there's always a possibility for corruption. So obviously in these devices, they're all solid state. There are no moving parts, but hidden files do get written to these cards, which eventually, potentially could corrupt the card. Now, corruption could show up in the form of images can't be displayed, or there's something wrong with the image, cannot copy, cannot view, etc. Or it could get really slow. I've not had that happen though, Aaron. So my recommendation for you, if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. When I sense that there's an issue with one of these cards, they go straight in the trash and I buy a new one. Why? Because they're cheap. And remember, I've said this before, when I started photographing in RAW on a Canon, it was probably either the 10 or 20D, 1 gigabyte cards, 1 gigabyte, okay, this is 16, 1 gigabyte cards were $500. So if you want to complain to me about the fact that this card is like 30 bucks or please, just buy a bunch of new cards. And as a wedding photographer, my recommendation is to number them and rotate them, and eventually they'll go out of rotation. That's just me being a freak, overly cautious, because I have a very low tolerance for risk. Also on the back of all of my cards, at least on my CF cards, it says reward if found, and I have my phone number. I don't care about the card, I care about the photos. So I put my name and phone number, no, just my phone number, sorry, couldn't fit my name. Just my phone number on all of these cards in case I lose them. But again, if there's an issue, throw it in the trash and get a new one. They're super cheap. So hopefully that helps. I don't think they, I don't know about this slowness issue. That's a new one for me. Amber asks, any advice or resources for switching to an in-person sales model? And how do you manage trying to master so many skills? Well, you know, mastering skills is a matter of setting priorities and goals, learning how to get really, really good at goal setting and figuring out what the outcome is that you want, establishing those goals, following them. But, I mean, you're going to have to prioritize your goals in terms of what you need to learn. So there are a lot of skills to master for sure in photography. Start with the most important and then work your way through them at your pace. Some people move very quickly and some people take their time. But in terms of resources, there are a ton out there. So I know that Creative Live has a bunch of online classes for IPS. Merritt and I have taught IPS in person. That went really well. It was really well received. There are resources. There are photographers that offer things online. You can certainly ask us specific questions. How do you get started? You have to determine what your goal is. What is your desired outcome? Is it for your clients to walk away from your sessions with a particular piece of wall art or albums? And do you want to help them through that process? And how do you feel about setting up appointments with people after the fact? So for instance, Mara switched to IPS this year. She's doing very well at it, but it changed her schedule. Because now when someone schedules a boudoir session, she has to get them in her calendar twice. Once for the session and then for the ordering appointment. So that's something to consider. But I would start by defining what your desired outcome is. Is it to make more money? Is it to serve your clients better? And then sort of work your way backwards from that and then look for the appropriate resources. But there are a ton of them out there. So, and I can help you a little more offline, Amber, if you want to chat about that. She also asked later, Amber did, Didn't you sell contracts? I'm looking for a model release and others. Yes, I have contracts. I will send you the link for that. And my wedding contract specifically has been lawyer approved. I had a lawyer look over and make sure that I was clear. But of course, I am not legally bound to these contracts in any way, shape, or form. There's my disclaimer. Mara says, IPS is awesome, but lots of change in your business with it. Yep, absolutely. Hi, Stella. It's nice to see you. You're welcome, Amber. Thank you. I'm glad that you're here to hear that. I hope that that helps. It was sort of a general answer to a really big question. I mean, switching your pricing models at any point is going to be a big deal, but taking it from what it is to IPS is a really big deal. So we'd have to talk about that. Okay, Emily asks, how do you go about editing with a second shooter? Do you put all of the pictures into one folder first before importing into Lightroom? And what is your process? The answer to that is yes, I do put all of the files into one folder for that client last name, organized in the month. And I don't care who it's from. I say that because I usually have at least two shooters. Well, no, always one second shooter and sometimes a third shooter. So I put all of those images in there. Now, I try to, prior to the wedding, just as we're starting, sync our cameras so that timestamps are perfect. That way, when I import into Lightroom, I can sort by timestamp. That's ideal, and that's usually what happens. Occasionally, I forget to do that. Oh my goodness. So I forget to do that, and I have to adjust the timestamp in Lightroom. I've recorded a video on that one in case that does happen, but you are able to use filters in your metadata to just view images from one particular camera serial number and then adjust the timestamp. That way you can sort them by time. So it doesn't really matter to me who shot it. What matters to me is the chronological order of the photos. So I want to make sure that I can organize them by time, and that's it. That's how I do it. Melissa is in need of a camera doctor. She said she was getting ready to leave for camera club last evening. We had it here at the house, and her son, who was a baby, like toddler, got a hold of the bag and the camera hit the floor. Yikes. Now her pictures are mostly black with some of the pictures showing up at the top. So I sent her the link for YM Camera in Youngstown because they seem pretty awesome. So I hope you can get that fixed, Melissa. I'm sorry to hear that. Mandy says, following up with leads, how many times should one follow up after an initial lead with no response? I typically will give about 5 to 7 days and send one, all caps, one follow-up, letting them know their date is still available and thanking them for reaching out. I've heard from others that they send 2+ follow-ups. How many is too many without being annoying? Okay, this is personal opinion, so I think whatever works well for your business or makes sense for you. I always sent one. Typically it was just one, within a couple of days after our initial contact. Hey, do you have any questions? Is there anything I can help you with? That was for leads coming in just via email, so they were sort of usually cold leads. Now for warmer leads where we have a connection or it's a referral, I might follow up twice, but I don't ever really recall following up more than that. I think after twice, they've probably moved on. Now I will do twice if it's someone that maybe I know of, or it's a venue or a wedding that I'm really interested in, or I think we would be a really good fit, then I'll follow up more. I would be a little more aggressive. But for cold leads, it's always just once, and if they don't reply, I'm just gonna assume that they moved on. And that's just my approach to that. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for that, but I certainly don't want to be annoying. I don't want to pester people, but I want to account for the fact that people are busy and they may have missed that initial email. So that's my approach, Mandy. I hope that helps. Ashley says, do you separate your wedding catalogs in Lightroom or have one big catalog? This year I started separating my catalogs per wedding, event, and per engagement session. Also, are you using normal folders or catalogs or using collections? This is a great question, Ashley. I would highly recommend that you and anyone else who maybe hasn't really got a great handle on their workflow or isn't sure what to do, that you check out my free video series on workflow because I talk about this. But I will say this, if you create a separate catalog for each client and or each session, you are absolutely defeating the purpose of Lightroom. The intent of Lightroom initially and still is about organization, how to organize your files, but it's a database. You can only have one database open at a time. Therefore, in order to search for your files, you would have to open up all of those separate catalogs. No, no, no. There is only one instance in which I would recommend, and there could be others that I haven't thought through for sure, but there's one example that I can think of where it makes sense to create a separate catalog, and that's for people who do commercial shoots with corporate clients. So if Apple is one of your clients, I might have a catalog that's just for Apple, for the photos I take for them, right? But most of us aren't doing that. We have people that are our clients. And I do create a new catalog per year so that the catalogs don't get too big, because ultimately they could slow down. It's a database. But no, I would highly recommend that you put all of your shoots for 2017, 2018 into one catalog. Now I do separate out personal from clients. So I have a client catalog and a personal catalog because those two never cross-pollinate. But if I want to search for something, I want to be able to look at an entire year's worth of photos. Just yesterday, my good friend Nicole Begley and I were working on some presets for her Hair of the Dog Academy. And she said to me, can you send me a good example of what we're working on with your chickens? And I said, I would love to. So I went into my catalog from the previous year. Remember, I have an entire year in that catalog. And I said to Lightroom, show me all of the images with the keyword chickens, and I could see all of my chicken photos. Isn't that so fun? And then I could find the photo that would work best for what she was trying to teach, and I could just ship it on over to her. Now, had I separated that out into multiple catalogs, that would not have worked, and in fact, it would have wasted a tremendous amount of time. Therefore, my recommendation is one catalog per year for clients, one catalog per year for personal, and anything I shoot related to clients is going in that client catalog so that I can search across that catalog to find images that I need. Otherwise, you're going to be opening a catalog, searching for something, closing it. Opening the next catalog, searching for something, closing it. I mean, there have been times when I've worked with the same florist multiple times throughout the year. If I have all of my weddings in one catalog, I can simply go to all photographs in the left-hand panels, and then in the right-hand panel under keywords, I can say, show me all of the images with the keyword flowers, which is where the keyword, where the flowers are predominantly displayed, and I could literally have all of those images like that. If I had to open multiple catalogs, I would have defeated the purpose and the intent of Lightroom, which is about organization. So I hope that clears up a few things for you, Ashley. You'll have to let me know what you decide, but definitely watch that free video series to get an idea how I do it. I am not suggesting that my way works for everyone, but it's worked pretty well for me for 14 years, and it works for a lot of people. And if it doesn't work for you, you should be able to figure out one that does just by watching it. But you also asked, are you using catalogs or normal folders or collections? And collections are really just virtual folders, just a way to organize your photos more, and I do use them occasionally. I use a variety of ways to organize my photos inside of Lightroom. Was it this week or last week? I posted a free video on how I use filters to organize photos to create albums. So what I do is I press 8 on my keyboard in order to flag an image for the album. I then filter and say to Lightroom, hey, just show me all of my album photos. And then I work with them from there, either in Lightroom or in Photoshop, but it's a quick, easy way for me to narrow things down. I have a free video on that, so you can watch that as well, and hopefully start to get some ideas on how you might want to organize your photos. Hopefully that helps. If you have any remaining questions, please type them below. I have a few more things I want to share with you as we wrap up, so let me know if you have anything else. But let me grab this camera down here. I had camera club last night, as I mentioned, at the house, and we talked about a couple of things. One is the dreaded 001 error on Canon. Had to think about that. I don't know the corresponding error on Nikon, but it's when your lens stops communicating with your camera. So we talked about how to clean these contacts on your lens. These contacts, which I just touched them, awesome, can sometimes get oil from your hands or just get dirty, and they cannot line up appropriately with the contacts on the mount up there. And when that happens, you'll get that error because the camera cannot communicate with the lens. So one thing you can do is take a soft cloth and just brush these off. That would help. Or a Q-tip dipped in some alcohol and then dabbed, so it's not like dripping with alcohol, and then wipe it on there in order to clean the oils off of it, and that will actually solve a lot of problems. We also talked about cleaning your lenses here and here and how to do that appropriately, just with a lens cloth or something appropriate. When you're working with contacts on your lenses, please do not use anything abrasive, as these are typically made of some type of soft metal and they can be damaged. So I would recommend just a soft cloth or that Q-tip with alcohol to clean that off. And I know Susie took live video last night of Camera Club. I don't know exactly everything that she captured, but we did go over this at Camera Club last evening. We also talked about how to lock up your mirror so that you can blow out some sensor dust if you have it. What I would do before every wedding is go outside and shoot my camera up at the sky at f/16 and then check for any little specks on the sensor. And if I did, I would lock up the mirror. There's a function for that. It says lock up mirror for cleaning. Take the lens off, unmount it, hold the camera like this. I use a baby nose sucker, a clean one, and I brush some air up in there in order to clean it out, and then I mount the lens back. I take the same photo and I check to see if I got that sensor dust. If I didn't, I try it again, but sometimes it could be a smudge. And if it's a smudge, then I recommend finding a professional to clean your sensor. I would not recommend cleaning your sensor, touching your sensor. Nope, that's not for me. I send it away to have it professionally done. So we talked about that, cleaning the sensor dust. Dave says, Susie got it all. Oh, okay, great. So if you jump over to the Camera Club group, you can watch it. She recorded it. So, she did it live, but it's there. So you can check it out. So we cleaned all of that just to make sure we have our cameras in good working order. So I think that was everything we talked about in terms of the big girl camera. But then I was sharing the Fuji X100T that I rented. This is the same camera that Leanne just purchased. Taryn owns, my friend David Burke has, and also my friend Terry Clark. They have the higher end versions of this. I don't know their model numbers because I'm new to the mirrorless camera. This mirrorless camera, and you may be wondering why, what's the benefit between an SLR and a mirrorless? Well, obviously an SLR has a mirror, and that's how the image is reflected into the viewfinder. So when you are looking through the viewfinder on your DSLR, you are actually seeing what will happen in terms of capturing the image because the mirror reflects it, and then on the sensor as well. So obviously, this little guy does not have a mirror. So what is the advantage? Well, the advantage is, look at it. I can fit it in my purse, and it's super lightweight. So what's the difference? Really, the question should be, what's the difference between this and a point and shoot? Because that's what it looks like, right? This has the advantage of a point and shoot in that it's small, but the advantage of a DSLR in that it has a much bigger sensor. So this is a crop sensor, a 4/3 sensor, versus a full frame sensor, which is my D750. They do make mirrorless cameras with full frame. Terry and Dave both have one, and so they make that, and they also make interchangeable lenses. So better than a point and shoot because you can interchange the lenses, and it has the quality of a DSLR because of the big sensor. Better than a DSLR because there's no mirror, so those mechanics aren't there, and it's much lighter weight. So I'm renting this for a week because I think I would love to have this just for my personal photos. You know, when you go on vacation or you go to an amusement park or the zoo, you don't always want to take your big camera because it's heavy, it's bulky. What lens do I take? This eliminates that. So I know Taryn uses it almost exclusively for her personal work. So if you take a look at her personal photos, they are beautiful. And Leanne she borrowed one and then she purchased one. So she's really enjoying it as well. I'm pretty new to this game, so I'm still learning it. It took me half an hour to figure out how to put it in aperture priority. It's right here. You have to. So A is auto, and then you can move the aperture right there. So you can take it down to 2.0. So this is a 2.0 23 millimeter lens. And this is a fixed lens. I don't think, meaning I can't interchange this lens. I don't think this model allows you to change the lenses, but it has extenders or something. Forgive my lack of knowledge. This is very new to me. But I know that Dave and Terry have the cameras with the full frame and the interchangeable lens, and they love them. Terry switched completely to Fuji. It's all he's using. And David has been using it. I think he's still kept his Nikon cameras, but he's been using it for his weddings as well, and they love them. No more sore neck and back. I have a lot of photographer friends that have ended up needing surgery. Dave specifically had to have surgery at the very top of his spine. They had to go in through his neck because of camera gear. It is not worth your body or your health. So I'm thinking this might be really fun. Amber, this is the one I rented, is the Fujifilm X100T. It's the model I would probably look at to purchase for my personal work. I also think I was hesitant about this lens because I'm typically not a super wide shooter. I love my 70 to 200 and I like to get really close. But I think what this is going to force me to do is to get more creative and out of my comfort zone. And that can never be a bad thing, right? So it's going to force me to figure out a different style of shooting. And I think I'm really going to enjoy it. I'm super excited about it. Like I said, I have it for a week. I'm learning it. I figured out the focus here, the single servo, continuous servo, and then manual focus. The menu items are completely foreign to me. Shutter speed up here, what? Okay. Exposure compensation here. The neat thing about this exposure compensation is that as you change it, you can actually see what's happening. And the reason is this is an electronic viewfinder. Because there's no mirror, you're not actually seeing what would happen in terms of the photo like you would with an SLR. You're seeing an electronic, I don't know, projection of that? I don't know if that's the right way to say that. But anyway, raw files, I immediately switched it over to raw. And the file size on this one, I don't know exactly what the pixels are. The files were about 33 megabytes, which is pretty big, so I must have a decent sensor, right? I know for a fact that this is a joke, okay? That's a joke. This flash I would never use. It does have a hot shoe, so you can mount a flash, but Terry was telling me that's not his favorite way to use it. I think he said he likes to use off-camera flash mostly with these. Also very, very quiet. Because there's no mirror, you don't get that same shutter sound. So it's really nice. I think it'd be really nice for ceremonies because it would be so quiet. Now I don't feel like I could accurately cover a ceremony with this particular camera and lens because I wouldn't have the zoom and I don't have the capability to physically get closer. In some churches they don't allow that. So I don't know what I would do there, but it's a cute little bugger, huh? If I were to purchase one of these, can you hear it? A little click. That's electronic though, you can turn it off. I think I would get the silver one because it's like retro looking and I think that's really in, right? So I'll post some photos. If you go to my personal page, when I posted about it, Leanne, Taryn, Terry, and Dave, four of some of the best photographers in Pittsburgh posted their images from their Fuji cameras. So you might want to go take a look at that on my personal page and see what you think. I might ask them to send me a few, and if Leanne and I can make it happen, maybe we'll do like a full review in the form of a blog post so you can learn more about mirrorless. I did post an article, so if you were curious, you could see what's the difference between mirrorless and a DSLR and also a point and shoot. It's essentially in the middle. It's got the size of a point and shoot, the quality of a DSLR. I mean, I love it. Very, very exciting. Any last minute questions? I think we're all set. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.